And we unfortunately, with girls, when we talk about hormones, we're introducing them as hormones as such a negative. Like they immediately think that these hormones are happening against them. But in reality, these hormones are happening for them.
Welcome to This Way Up, the podcast dedicated to supporting parents and caregivers navigating the complex world of mental health. I'm Andrea, and each episode, we dive deep into the conversations that matter, exploring the challenges, triumphs, and transformative journeys of those facing mental health struggles within their families. Whether you're here for expert advice, inspiring stories, or just a little boost to get you through the day, we've got you covered. So grab a cup of coffee, kick back, and join us as we find the bright spots in the mental health journey, because we're all climbing our way up together.
Today, we are joined by Kimberly Grustus, the owner and inventor, I guess, of Good For You Girls, a skincare line that is designed for tweens and their ever-changing hormones. Kimberly is going to talk to us about puberty and best ways to approach it, when to be concerned, and then she's going to share with us what happens during puberty. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I think puberty is a fun subject. So
you've lived through it, right?
You still think it's fun? Well, every day. Yeah, it's actually wonderful. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, there are a lot of changes that go on during puberty. We've all personally experienced it. And if you have children or even no children, you are watching them experience it as well. It is a time of tremendous growth, but it needs to be handled appropriately. And I think we have a better understanding of it nowadays, at least than when I was a kid, right? Like when I was a kid, my mom was just like, well, kind of stayed away from it. But so what I'd like to do is kind of start with what is going on in a child's body and their mind during puberty, and specifically girls, because I know you focus so heavily on girls, but boys also have a lot of changes during this time as well.
Absolutely. Well, the reason I started my skincare company, I've been in the nutrition and health and beauty industry for, over 30 years. And I started this line because my girls had both severe asthma and allergies. And so I was really up on the fact that a lot of these chemicals that are in skincare products, because we're using them topically, they're getting right into our bloodstream. And a lot of chemicals such as synthetic fragrances, a lot of the preservatives that we're using are actually mimicking estrogen in the body. And puberty is the second largest growth next to infancy in a girl's body. And so we now know that we have statistically, girls are entering puberty much younger. Their bodies are being affected by the bombardment of hormones, both internally and externally. And I did not want, girls really need products at a younger age. And I really wanted something. I knew if I was looking for those kinds of products for my own girls, I knew there were other parents out there that were also as well. One thing, when we talk about puberty, I think it immediately goes to the reproductive system. Like everybody thinks, it's the reproductive system. It's that horrible sixth grade movie. You know what I mean? Like that's the first time. But the reproductive system is actually the last to be affected by puberty. Puberty starts in the brain. It starts in the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, the adrenal glands. And then it trickles. It's like this delicate cascade of hormones that eventually reach the reproductive system. So we are seeing signs of puberty really, really early. A lot of times, because it starts in the brain, it starts with the attachment we call the cuddle chemical, right? So we see an intensity of emotions for girls. Like one day, Susie's great on the playground, but then the next day, there's, she's my best friend, and she, there's the pain that goes along, and that there's like that attachment. Everything's very, very intense. That's one of the earliest signs where we all remember like the BFF bracelets, right? It is that intensity. That is the early onset of puberty. But more than, it's just, again, the reproductive, it's the blood, it's the bones. It affects, these hormones affect every single system in their body. They are going to get, between the ages of 11 and 13, they're actually getting 26% of their bone growth.
Wow.
And their hips and their pelvis, the strength in their bones is growing 5 times. They're growing 2.75 inches on average a year. Like, this is significant growth in what their body is doing. And we, unfortunately, with girls, when we talk about hormones, we're introducing them as hormones as such a negative. Like, they immediately think that these hormones are happening against them. But in reality, these hormones are happening for them. And I love the positive language that we as parents can use to completely change what they are going through and set them up for strong women and confidence around their bodies during that time. It is, again, the hormones from the day that they start growing. We recognize that growth. We should be talking about hormones and the effect on their blood. They're getting their adult heartbeat, their blood pressure's changing, right? And when we talk about the brain, the myelin sheath is moving at a faster synapsis. I mean, it's going so much faster. So they're having truly these outer body experiences, this confusion, this whirlwind in their brain. And plus, not to mention, they're supposed to be the best students, the best athletes, the best friends, the best kids. The intense pressure that we put on our daughters at this time of significant change is incredible.
I know my kids were wanting to stay children, and they were frightened a little bit of changing into an adult. And, we all joke about puberty as being a scary thing, but I think you bring up such a poignant point in that we need to be talking to them about the excitement of moving into adulthood. And that's what I tried to focus on with my kids, was this excitement. We didn't necessarily talk about the hormones and all of the changes, but it was, you are setting yourself up for life.
Yeah. And it creates this wonderful relationship that they will have with themselves if we're using the right language. And I do not subscribe to puberty, just suck it up and get over it. That's just so wrong. That message is so wrong. Puberty is a superpower, right? And if that positive language we teach our girls, again, puberty for girls is different from boys from an emotional, from, again, physiological and an emotional standpoint. There is an intensity for girls. And you're right, there is such trauma around it because it is unknown.
Well, and even just getting a period is scary.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Let alone sitting there one day or one moment and feeling happy and secure, and the next moment crying and not knowing why you're so upset. It can be very frightening.
Yeah. And I think that's why when we talk about the language and we talk about, when they're feeling out of control, that's in the brain, that they begin to recognize, wow, this is not wrong. What's happening in their brain and that intensity and that out of control or that uncertain feeling is absolutely normal. I hate to talk badly about medications and things like that, because there's a lot of kids that really, really need to be put on medications because they're struggling. But I also think that there has to be some serious conversation about what is normal during puberty so that we can recognize, hey, this is a normal thing. This will wane. This is a teachable moment. This is a strength moment. This is a you are incredible moment. Like, what your body is doing for you is absolutely unbelievable moment.
How long does puberty last for girls?
The average age of puberty now is 11. They say 11 to 13. And breast development is actually used to happen with puberty, but breast development now is happening almost 2 years earlier. And that in my, a determination is because they are receiving high levels of estrogen in their world. So again, they're getting these false signals of estrogen and chemicals that actually are mimicking estrogen in the body. So, and again, we know that a 9-year-old developing breast has a very different childhood than an 11 and 12-year-old. Right? So we have a wide range, and it is, there is that trauma when they're younger because they don't really know what's happening to their bodies. And we have cognitive thinking. That is also a big thing. We have social media that's there. We have all of these things that the earlier child enters puberty, the greater risk they are at for that confusion and depression potentially. And that's, When in the brain, when the myelin sheath, that is where there is depression. They've identified, like I'm involved in the study, but the scientists have actually identified that if there is an issue with that connection, that they are at a greater risk for depression.
So do outside chemicals and hormones affect that myelin sheath?
They affect all systems of the body. So the best way that I can explain it, or the easiest way to explain it, is when you eat a protein, your body knows what to do with it, a carbohydrate, a fat. Your body's an organic machine, right? So your body takes those things in and utilizes it like, what it's supposed to do with it, right? It utilizes it as your body's supposed to utilize it. So now when you're introducing anything synthetic, so that is in the way of a chemical, a dye, a fragrance, all of that, the closest chemical compound that your body thinks it is estrogen. So we call those estrogenic chemicals, meaning they're actually mimicking estrogen in the body. And it's not, and experts will say, oh, it's just a little tiny bit. It's just a little tiny bit. Well, over time and at this crucial age in development, it is a big deal. So it really is critical during puberty to try to reduce the exposure to chemicals in your child. Now, boys are not immune. So if in 6th grade or middle school, you'll notice that there's usually a weight gain in boys. They're like kind of get plumper. There's a little heaviness because they haven't gone up yet. They're going out. But you also have breast bud development in boys. So you'll notice during those years for boys, they're developing breasts. Now, when their testosterone kicks in, what will happen is it will push down that estrogen. But boys are also getting those signals of estrogen. It's really a fascinating topic. And again, I think just for the systems of the body alone, again, their bone growth, nutrition is also huge and lacking in this demographic, right? They are not sleeping well. And that's the melatonin shift is 3 hours difference. So, we have these kids who can't sleep. Well, there's a scientific reason that they can't sleep, right? And so empathy is huge for me, and I think in parenting, and I love to just be able to get the word out to parents whose children have not gone through this yet or are going through this now, that empathy will help both of you. Ironically enough, with the bone growth that they're going through now is exactly what women will lose during menopause. It's the same amount. When your children are this age, or when your girls are this age, you're in perimenopause, right? It's usually when women. So there's so much to connect over, to bond over, to understand together. And that's why when we blame hormones, we say menopause, it's our hormones. No, it's the lack of hormones, right? It's the hormones leaving our bodies. So just as amazing, right, as the hormones coming into our, girls during puberty, the struggles that we have as women when we're perimenopausal and menopausal, it is just as intense, just in reverse. And so with mothers and daughters, I love to just reinforce that there is so much togetherness. There's so much that she can learn from you to love her body, love these changes, and a lot that you can give yourself grace for as well. We are always at the bottom of the barrel as women. And if you've made it this far with your kids, right, and they're still alive.
I was going to say, they're still alive.
They're still alive. They're driving you nuts. But it's also a really wonderful time as a woman to kind of reconnect with yourself. They watch us. Our girls are watching how we treat ourselves, and we need to model that behavior. We need to teach them what they're going to see, how they should take care of themselves. And so if we as women have neglected ourselves up until this point, now we need to stop. Now we need to say, okay, I'm going to take, because empty nest is just around the corner, right? Which brings a whole lot of other issues, a whole lot of my purpose is over as women, mom, and, where is it? And so this is such a beautiful gift that we've been given with our children to really bond and communicate, because the issues are just going to get bigger. And if we can talk about hairy armpits and pubic hair now, then all of the other subjects are just going to be so much easier.
It just
You brought up a good point a while ago where you said we need to come from it from a point of empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think empathy comes when there is a true understanding and knowledge behind things. Now, again, when I think my mom obviously did a lot better than her mom, but when I was younger, it was we just really didn't talk about a lot of this thing, a lot of these topics. First of all, it was all based on the sex change. I mean, there was nothing that was, talking about what's going on with your brain, this, that, and the other. And it all revolved around your period. Your period was the time when puberty happened, but nothing else that happened within those few years surrounding it.
How
Everything
far
that
we've
surround
come.
how far we've come. Right. Exactly. And now there are days that I sit with my daughter who's 19 and I'm like, oh, why are we talking about that? Because she is just so open with any topic, which is amazing to me, sometimes uncomfortable, but amazing to me in the fact that she'll say, well, we all do it, or it happens to all of us. And I'm like, yeah, why aren't we talking about all of these different things? Because I think it normalizes it for kids. And you also mentioned earlier when to recognize what is happening with your tween. Is it an issue that really you should seek more help? Or is it something that is normal that is happening?
Exactly. And I think that when we're aware of those changes, body language is huge too. Like, again, they're in it. So it's normal for them. So let's say that they have, my boys have a lot of bone, the bone growth, they have the growing pains. And again, we just brushed it off. Oh, it's like it's growing pains. Well, it can be more than growing pains in sports that are, so our adrenal glands, which sit on the kidneys, we talk about burnout as adults. Now, pubic hair and body odor is one of the first signs that started from the adrenal glands. We don't necessarily know that. That's new information, right? So when we have early pubic hair or we have this early body odor, that might be a sign that the adrenals are getting stressed out. And our kids don't get a lot of downtime, which is so crucial for that development in both, boys and girls. It is, and with girls, it is so important that they have that time alone with themselves to develop their sixth sense as women, right? To listen to their intuition. Intuition is also developed at this age. In childhood, they're just little balls. They bounce everywhere, right? They don't have much intuition. And then as they get to puberty, their internal dialogue starts to happen. And that also is a struggle. But that is a beautiful time that when girls are allowed to spend alone with themselves and just in their head, they will develop that intuition, that sixth sense that they will use over and over and over again as in adulthood. What I was talking about, another important point that I wanted to focus on too, is that attachment hormone, we call it it's cortisol, whatever. It is very different for girls and boys, again, right? Because we are the child bearers, right? We need that. That is an intense emotion that is critical that we need. And so it could, early on, again, like I said, it's very scary, but so important in our role as women and mothers in the future that we are allowed to feel that and experience that and understand that. Also helps to teach your daughter when she starts dating. That's also that those emotions are pretty high, that they're pretty strong.
Right.
But for a reason. And that's why they're there. Yeah.
Right. I mean, from early survival, we have been, genetically predispositioned to be.
And those are fun to talk about. Like you talk about breaking that ice and talking about that later. I enjoyed that with my girls, talking about that. So kudos to your daughter for really, and it is breaking the generational cycle, right? In many ways, it can be.
Yeah.
It can feel like that.
Well, you talk about that cuddle hormone and how it's so apparent. And it can be good and it can be heartbreaking at the same time, especially when all the girls are going through it, at one time, right? We talk about girl drama that happens around that, middle school girl drama. It's real. It's real.
It's so real. And but when we understand why it is, like, why
Right.
is it? It's because, you don't have a child and leave it on the sidewalk, right? We need, no, let's be like,
Yeah.
it's truly raw. Like, we have to be attached. We have to be like have that intensity because that's what we're built for. Right. And when we understand that too, as parents, we can also give them the tools to come down from that if we think it's unhealthy.
Well, I was going to say, women and girls, we always get labeled as emotional, or we lead by emotion. We don't lead by reason. This is why you're so dramatic, and even like the middle school girl drama, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's what we use around it.
Yeah.
And it's good to hear and to remind ourselves that as painful as it can be, both as a child and a mother watching it, it's also growth. It's a way for girls to connect with their purpose, to be more sensitive, to grow into womanhood, motherhood, etc. I remember when my daughter had some challenges in middle school with friends, and I just asked my son, I said, you, Matthew, and Ben don't seem like you ever argue. And he's 2 years older. He says, oh, no, Mom. We have disagreements. He said, but we just go out onto the basketball court and then just play basketball and it's all done. It's over by then. And you think about survival and kind of where we came from, that makes perfect sense. A man didn't need to feel all those feels and those connections like women needed to.
I don't make friends when I say this, but there are differences, and there's just innate differences, and you can't get a dog to meow and a cat to bark. You just can't. And I think when we recognize those unique gifts and qualities, they are gifts, right? You can't. I mean, trust me. Our men can come to pat, and they can. You know what I mean? They are capable of empathy and all that stuff. Nobody's getting a free ride here in my brain, in my world, in my brain. But like you said, there are certain things that they are just not innate to do or to respond to initially, and they deal with things differently. So but it's such a power. Those emotions are so powerful, and I love. What would we be without them? Honestly, that would be awful boring. Right. And the drum, and that's again, working through it and how we are working through it and having those conversations with our friends. And, you hurt me, I hurt you. And it's training. They're training wheels, all of this. And we go through that. And we hope that they've got those training wheels by the time they're out of our care in college so that they can better, right? We've got that short amount of time to teach them that or to guide them with that. And then they're on their own, then it's their own. And I just feel like if we ignore things, we're not doing them any favors. And heck, we have them as well. And with puberty, that's really not again, understanding that they sometimes can't control their emotions. My older daughter she was very quiet vocally with her emotions. She was so good at being introspective in herself. My younger daughter had a mouth. And the mouth-brain connection would just absolutely fire. She didn't mean what she couldn't understand, and she had to get it out. It was like this purging. And I, of course, recognized why she was emotional or what. And we had a word, it was called pickle. Like, you're in a pickle. My mother used to do that. You found yourself in a pickle. It's kind of an old-fashioned thing. But we used it when she was in that emotional state where she just couldn't de-escalate, and she needed me to know that it wasn't personal, that whatever she needed to purge out of her mouth was just coming. And I would say pickle, or she would say pickle, and it would be immediately, I get it. I understand. Let's let this go. Let's separate, go do what you need to do. I'm here for you when you're ready to come back. That never got her off the hook for later when she said, something, if it was hurtful or whatever, but it gave me the reminder of grace, right? I was reminded to have grace because of the empathy and the feelings that she was going through. And later, when she was about 19, she came to me and she thanked me. And she thanked me for that. And she was like, I could be so hard on you because I knew you weren't going anywhere. And that's okay.
And that I think is something too of parents that have children who struggle with anxiety and depression and any of those things is taking a moment to recognize it's very similar that what is happening at that time, if your child is having some sort of an anxiety attack or a panic attack, that what is happening to them and it's not directed at you.
Yes.
And they sometimes just need to work through it. And this is where it gets muddy too, right? Like, I think it's very similar, some of the hormonal changes that go on and the behaviors that occur with that occur with things like anxiety and such, which is just this intense fluctuation of emotion that comes out.
Well, again, if we understand what the connection is, right, what the source is, right, that in the, again, the hormone or the responsibility, the result of the hormones, we can say, yeah, oh heck yeah, I get this freight train. Yeah, this is a freaking freight train, and the intensity of the emotions that one might feel might be different, are different, and they can all go through that, and I think that that anxiety is real. It's real. Again, that outer body. I remember I used to have those outer body experiences. Like I just felt like things were spinning internally that I couldn't control. And I would just have to let go. Okay, let it go, let it go, let it go. Right. They would spin, they would spin, they would spin. It was like a hurricane inside in the brain and the body. I would just have to surrender to it because I didn't know what the hell was happening.
So I remember when I first started dating my husband, he'll probably shoot me for saying this, but I remember him saying there was no, he didn't believe in PMS.
Oh, gosh.
And I, luckily, after my second, and I say luckily, very sarcastically, ended up with something called PMDD. I don't even know what it stands for, but it's like intense PMS, right? And I remember I would just get so upset. And it was like a light switch would turn on around mid-month. And then the light switch would turn off and I would be happy the minute I started my period, right? I was like, oh. And I didn't really tie the two together until one day, no kidding, he brought home one too many cans of apricots. And I had to put them away. And I am just in a fury, taking out all the stuff out of the pantry and watching myself from above. I thought it was a movie. I'm watching myself frantically taking this out, just getting more and more upset. So I decided to then seek help. I was like, something's going on here. And I went into the doctor and I made my husband come. I'm like, you need to tell him what's going on. He's like, oh no, it's real. It's real. And then, I got treatment for it to stabilize all of those hormones that were going through my body at that time. And I'm imagining now looking back that that's similar to probably what's happening to girls during puberty. All of these emotions all of these hormones are just flooding them over a shorter period of time.
Yeah, no, it is. And again, it's remarkable. Like I just think it's fascinating, right? And
yeah.
And here's another thing too. So if your daughter is menstruating, here's another wonderful thing to do with her is if she's a regular menstruator, if she's having regular periods, find a wheel, find where the hormone, like the first time of your period, the cycle, the 28-day cycle, and map out the emotions on it, because it'll show you like never go on a date here, never do this here, like, right? And it's fascinating. I love them. I should have one on the website. I really should put one up on the website because it's astonishing. And they're period apps and things. But I think visually, when they can see this cycle calendar, they go, oh my God, yeah, I'm miserable here. And then here I'm good. So like during those down days or those really stressful days of her hormone cycle, that's when you go get your nails done. That's when you plan a lunch together, you have tea, you do like something like that again, just to get her out and away from a lot of those pressures, because that can compound. Like that's when you need to give yourself some time and some grace and to know your own cycle, because we just try to push, we just push through it. Like we just keep going, instead of saying, well, you know what? I really think I need some downtime. I'm going to take this, because we're just so much better after we do, right?
Well, interestingly enough, when you're in a household or those women that you're around our periods tend to sync. So we probably all need that time at once, that female bonding time or whatever.
Exactly. And, sign me up. If my girls are having a moment where they need lunch and a manicure, just sign me up. I'll go. Right.
Yes, that's fine. That sounds good to me.
We'll all go together.
And, it's probably not a bad thing also for the men in your life to have that. So they also know, because I know that was a big thing. We have 2 boys, 2 girls, right? My son and my husband and my daughter and myself. And I would have to come in and, they'd be like, what the heck is going on? I'd be like, hey, this is just, and then everything was fine. It was almost like, again, when we explained it, okay, hey, this is why she's sad or she's so upset. And they would be like, oh, okay. But we had to have those conversations.
Yeah. And, honestly, too, on there, it's easy for skin issues. Also, like, that's when your breakouts, you're going to be able to map it. You're going to say, okay, this is when my breakouts are going to happen. So I'm going to stop eating certain foods like the week before, or it's just amazing. Again, I geek out about this stuff. I just think I think the body is an incredible thing. And the more my generation, we didn't figure it out until we were grown adults. So for them understanding their bodies and their reactions and things like that, what a gift at a young age.
So you have a daughter that is starting to develop breast buds. What's and not a obviously long dissertation as to work, but what are some things that you can say or tips that you can give mothers when this starts to happen on how to explain what is going on?
At that time, she's probably going to get a lot more private. You're going to be out of the bathroom. Like, you're going to start seeing that. So the first thing is to honor and respect it. You know what I mean? Like, this is amazing. Again, if she's younger, not to be afraid. I think that's reinforcing not to be afraid that this is perfectly normal. I love the experience of all these big things when you can take her shopping, go get her a training bra, make her feel comfortable, because she's going to start to feel insecure about that. So make that an event for her. Make that something special that you're doing. Again, you're showing her trust, right? And you're starting that communication about, if you think this is going to happen, this is going to take, it could be very quick or it could take a long time, that you are her sounding board if she feels uncomfortable, if something doesn't feel right to her. So just being able to prepare her for that. And also the time, again, that her menstruation may not happen at the same time, that it might be a very, very, because that's also a fear, right? I'm getting breast milk. Oh, I'm going to get my period. Well, if she's 9, she might not. Right. So, but if you haven't really addressed a lot of those bodily changes, you have to, like, that's and preparation or just having awareness is the best thing. So she's not afraid of what's happening. Your own stories. No, chances are, if she's got breast buds, she's got friends whose bodies have changed, are starting to change. A lot of times they're uncomfortable talking about themselves, but it's easy to talk about others and being aware. And you as a mom, you see her friends, you see, oh, geez, this is happening to Susie. I hope she's okay. I hope she's not afraid of this change. I hope she understands that I hope her mom has talked to her about what's happening in her body, so she's not afraid of it. We don't have to use them. Also, we can sort of deflect a little bit and use others during that conversation or to help that conversation.
That's a great point. Now, you're as a parent, you're watching your daughter on the emotional side. You said that puberty starts in the brain, and you start seeing some of these intense emotions going on. When do you as a parent know this is normal, developmental, and maybe this is something I should be more concerned about?
So they're good about talking when they're younger, right? And then the time in the car, they'll talk, or their friends. So you can pick up on those cues. If your daughters are in the backseat talking to somebody, talk about it later. How did that make you feel? Right? Do you feel that that's a good emotion? Do you feel like it was too intense for you? How do you, and then it can also be, this happened today, acknowledging it and say, hey, can I ask you tomorrow if you had the same feeling? Can we talk about this again? Because I want to make sure you're feeling okay with it. So whatever happened, right? And then the next day, say, how did it go with her today? How were you feeling how was your relationship today? And she might be, oh, totally fine, right? Or she might still be wearing it. And then the next day. So you can sort of map that, take notes like, okay, there's an intensity there, because their intensity shouldn't be lasting, more than 2 days. If something's lasting more than the 48-hour period or 72-hour period where there's just like that intensity, you got to dig a little deeper. But you could also give her the tools, write it down, have her write it down. How did this make me feel that so-and-so did this to me or said this to me? Did I provoke any of it? Let's be real, right? Was I kind to her? Did I do anything? Was there somebody else involved? And again, girls at that age, sometimes there's a triangle. These are girls over here, these are girls over here. That's kind of a common thing because those are trust issues that girls are developing. That's because of trust issues that sometimes they play off of one another, right? That's a big thing that's testing trust with your friends, right? Am I trustworthy? Is she trustworthy? That kind of thing. So the tools to write it down, what really bothered you about that? How do you want to respond to that? How should you respond to that? Because wanting to respond is a lot of times different than how you should respond to something. And again, just that act of getting it down on paper, she doesn't have to share it with you. It's just could be in a journal. That's why I love journaling for girls, whether they're scribbling a picture, but they are simply with a book and a pen or a marker set, and they are just spewing. They are just literally getting it out. And that is their sacred space. They don't have to share it. But you can say, listen, spend a few minutes getting those emotions, putting it on paper, and really thinking about, truly what you're feeling rather than what you think you're feeling. And then have her come back to you and say, okay, how are you feeling about it? Did you sort it out? And if there's still that confusion, then you can, again, over time, and that you're not able to do that, or she's not able to come out of that, then that might be an opportunity to seek some help, especially if you're noticing those signs of depression, right? So, that's important because we do want to watch that.
And sometimes it's so hard as a parent to know, is your child being sulky? Are they being private? Or is there an issue that is driving that, like depression?
Yeah. They're allowed to be sulky. They're allowed to be private. But if they're going on for an extended period of time, that's when you need to get them talking about it. You really need to have them feel, again, that you are their safe space, right? That's when you need to be able to spend that time.
You said something earlier too that I think is something we learn later on in life. We always want to fix everything right at once. But you said, ask them if you can come back to it later. And I know that I want to personally work through things right away. What we do best as humans, once we're able to process our own feelings. And I think coming back to it, and I think journaling is giving them the tools, the confidence to know that they can manage those feelings themselves and still then talk about it later if they need to with you. But you're allowing them to grow through it instead of fixing it for them.
Yeah. And the reason I say is ask them, right, is because, again, their emotions might be extremely intense. And then if you the next day just come out of the woodwork and say, hey, how do you feel about that? You've dishonored really their feelings from the previous day that were so intense, because that's the whole reason you had that conversation, right? Because there was an intensity to those feelings. And she might not be ready to talk to you at that particular time. So yeah, no, you have to you can't catch them off guard. Like nobody likes to be caught off guard, but it's just sort of a gentle reminder. I'm here if you need me.
It's interesting because diaries used to be thought to talk about, at least my perception was that was where you wrote about all your boyfriends, right? Those kind of thoughts. But even back then, they were tools for middle schoolers to work through those emotions and to write down those deep, dark secrets. Maybe we didn't know it as well as we do today as to how helpful it is, but they've been used for years.
And I got to tell you, that is so much better for them to get it down there than it is to accidentally Snapchat their emotions. So you're giving her a pen and a piece of paper. You're allowing her to get that out so she's not caught. Because again, they don't have critical thinking. And so there can be a lot of damage done unintentionally, off the cuff, because trust me, they want to get it out.
Oh, you bring up such a good point, because I don't know how many social media things I've seen where girls are just crying on the video. Oh, I haven't even ever, I mean, I've always thought, gosh, that's a little bit too much to share, but I didn't really.
Because they don't know where to put it. And you have that, giving them those tools, right? This is a toolbox. We're giving them a toolbox, and they need to put their own tools in it. We can give them the basics, but they need to know how to use them. And when they know that they have that safe space to get it out. So again, that's when they're younger, start writing it down, write up a story, make up a story, you can start those things in preparation. You don't want to just hand a journal to a 12-year-old. You just really, I mean, not that that's a bad thing, right? But you want that to be part of their regular exercise, is that they're alone with their thoughts. I don't care if they write song lyrics. They could start just anything to start that progression to get these things out is just so amazing for girls, because they will never not need that. We need that, right? That's why we have friends. That way we have confidants. That's why we have, but as adults, we understand more how our brain works, that critical thinking that, oh, you should, no, you shouldn't, or you shouldn't, right? So it's just, and they just need to purge. They absolutely need that. It's so healthy.
So talk a little bit about Good For You Girls, the skincare line that you've got, and why it's so amazing.
Oh, well, I feel that my life led me here. All of, again, my knowledge in nutrition and sport nutrition and my girls being sick and things like that. I was just angry. I was angry at what companies were slathering on our daughters, and I knew I could do better. So that was really the start of it. And the line is super simple. We have 4 facial products and 3 body care products in a couple different scents and deodorant. So it really is to be meant as a girl's first introduction to skincare and self-care. It's not about makeup. It's about self-care. And sebum production starts at about 9. Scrubbing their face or putting harsh acids on their face to exfoliate like adults. But their skin is the goal, right? Their juicy young skin. So many 12-year-olds running to Sephora are now following, influencers and things like that. And they're disrupting their microbiome. They're exposing their skin to UV damage. It's just really not a pretty picture. And they're just creating this chaos. But again, at this age, that's critically important. But again, we don't want to use harsh chemicals. So our products are botanical based. And so we don't have, the yucky nasties. The scents that we use are all natural, 100% natural, just enough to make I wanted to build into the product. And it's not, it's not your mom's, it's not the family's, it's for her. So we're honoring this rite of passage and her desire to take care of herself. I think it's a great jumping off point to just learning how to look in the mirror and love what you see.
That's beautiful. And we all need to do that.
Yes.
We really
Nobody
do.
wants to be the stinky girl.
No, and like you said, that's when it all starts, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's one of the first signs.
If you're a 5th grade, 4th grade teacher, you better have some candles in that classroom.
Absolutely.
So, well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for sharing your insight on puberty, a time that can be confusing and but necessary, and can be really a highlight for a mother-daughter relationship.
And wouldn't we all want to go back there? Like, wouldn't we as women? Heck yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, we talked about menopause.
Yeah.
I want to go back to getting those hormones.
I know, right?
I'm trying to embrace this whole menopause thing, but it'll come. There's beauty in that as well. There really is beauty in that.
I'll share with the audience, very personal thing, but when I was having my hot flashes and things like that, they were really intense, as everybody knows, they're super intense. I would celebrate them. I wouldn't see, again, it's positive reinforcement.
Right,
I would go, yeah, she's not ready to leave. She's not ready to leave. Like, that's what I would tell myself. She's fighting, she's kicking and screaming. She doesn't want to go. Like, so again, how we talk to ourselves, give ourselves some grace, have a little fun with it, right? Enjoy this crazy ride.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to This Way Up. I hope you're feeling a little lighter, a little brighter, and ready to take on whatever comes next. Remember, the journey of mental health is all about progress, not perfection. So keep climbing. And don't forget to celebrate the small wins. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little lift.